Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. Tonight is May the 25th. Before we go into the music, this is a week. It's been a lot of fun and games. A rather harrowing week for one of our members who had to face a criminal in court who murdered her father, who shot at her and robbed her family. Our hearts go out to Sol ex Tempestas on what was quite a harrowing ordeal that her and her family endured, no doubt. But in a world of have and have-nots, this is a theme that is all too common, and this is why we continue to put our necks on the line with the ultimate goal of eradicating the cancer on this planet of violence, crime and imbalance. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name is Thomas Williams and tonight is May the 25th. No false flags today, so far anyway. So we'll see where we're going with that. I don't know whether you heard the opening message. I'm going to repeat it again because there was sound issues that we had to endure last night also. And one of our members this week, we think we've had it bad, or some of us do anyway, but one of our members had to face the criminal in court this week who murdered her father, who shot at her and robbed her family. And that's quite a harrowing ordeal to endure for anybody. A sad reminder. And this is part of the problem why we keep going. And some people are getting tired of it, and you just cannot carry on putting people in this sort of danger because some people have and some people don't. The world of have and have nots. And our hearts go out to Sol ex Tempestas, who had to go to court this week and listen to it all over again, relive that horrible day. It's just sad. But like I said earlier, this is why we put our necks on the line. We have to. We can't all hide in bubbles and think it's not happening to us. And we have to drive forward with the ultimate goal of eradicating the cancer on this planet of the violence and the crime, and more importantly the imbalance. This is what causes a lot of the violence and the crime, the imbalance in society. Right, so where are we going this week? We do have some intel. Some of it's rather interesting. Some of it's really interesting, and some of it's the usual fun and games from the clowns. And there's op-ed pieces in there, and a lot of questions that we haven't covered. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed last night's show. Apologies for the sound issues, but there's a lot of fun and games going on around a lot of people who are involved in this sort of stuff. Someone decided it was fun today to turn off my electricity. Nobody else's, just this house. So there was a doubt whether this show was going to go ahead at one point. And we'll see what happens on this show. So Kevin was interesting for those of you who remember him in Cosmic Voice. There was a lot of doubts over Kevin, mainly about that came about from a fallout with Alfred Weber. Now, I'm not too fond of Mr. Weber and his narrative, so we gave Kevin an opportunity to come on and put the record straight, which I felt he did last night, and told us a lot of good details of what is actually going on and some of the depths of the crimes against children by the church and the state. Kevin will be back on in future when he's got some updates, so look forward to that. Now, some of the news, let me just find it. I've got that much in this week and it's all over the place with doing the show last night. Now, obviously the biggest thing that took place this week was Manchester. And it appears there was an incident of some description. To date, I know I haven't had much time to look over the last 36 hours. I'm still not seeing evidence of what actually took place. I can't believe someone didn't have a recording in a concert. You know, anyone who's been to concerts knows everyone's got phones out and they're recording it or they're taking pictures, and yet unless something has changed in the last 24 hours, there's no evidence of what took place. And this is eerily similar to Sandy Hook. Now, people have been injured, there's no question in that, but what has taken place since is names being put forward of people that have died 3 or 4 years earlier. People are supposed to have died in foreign countries but are not. And of course the classic, the 22nd, the date, and the numerology. This is the 6th incident. Moscow, London, Manchester, the ones I can remember, all happening on the 22nd, all in March, all in May, and all in July. 3, 5 and 7. Now this plays into the Masonic stuff, and some of the constellation stuff. Of course the 3 is representing of Orion and Orion's belt. The 5 is the V, as in Taurus. Go look at the planets that are in Taurus, then you'll have an idea. And the 7 is Pleiades, 7 sisters. Now the key is, what is the 1? You look at in the Masonic symbolism, it's 1, 3, 5 and 7. That tells you who they're either in league with or getting their information from. But the key is who or what is the 1. So Manchester, our hearts go out to the people who were really killed, if that is the case, and to the ones who were injured. And hopefully now more and more people will start seeing through the nonsense of these recurring dates and put 2 and 2 together and realise what we've been telling them all along. This is all part of the ritual stuff. Of course Kevin mentioned that last night, different type of ritual with children and all that, but then there was a lot of children in that concert. It just beggars belief. So we've had a lot of issues to do with Mr. Trump, and I can't say I'm going to be too kind to him tonight, because I've seen enough this week that suggests he is rather concerning at the moment. Of course it could all change, but as we see it, as it stands, it doesn't look too good. Now, imagine a scenario where Saudi Arabia invaded America or the northern states and took the Keystone Pipeline. Can you imagine the uproar here that a foreign nation coming into a country and just taking over our resources? And yet this is what we do to other countries in our name. But Mr. Trump says in Saudi, we are not here to lecture. We are not here to tell other people how to live, what to do, who to be, or how to worship. We are here to offer partnership based on shared interests and values to pursue a better future for us all. And that's fine. But Saudi Arabia was implicated in 9/11. Have we suddenly forgot that? Now, the guy sitting next to Trump, the Saudi King Salman, who incidentally is the first name of the alleged suicide bomber in Manchester. Coincidence? Same day? Time will tell. He declared the Iranian regime has been the spearhead of global terrorism. I don't recall Iran invading any country. So why are we suddenly picking on Iran? Well, of course, it's to do with oil and resources and pipelines again, isn't it? It's just getting beyond the joke. But let's look at what really took place with Iran. Who was funneling weapons to the Iranians via Benghazi? That's why the ambassadors got killed, as they found out. What about John McCain's role over there? Suddenly he goes to the Middle East and suddenly chaos ensues and planes drop bombs. Every single time. Why did America and the UK give Saddam Hussein weapons of mass destruction to fight Iran, when Iran never attacked another country? Who was it that installed the Ayatollah Khomeini or Mr. Ahmadinejad? Who's that? Our friends at Langley again. Both of them. And let us not forget the Iran-Contra shenanigans involving Oliver North, Caspar Weinberger, another Nazi, Reagan and the 14 others who were indicted, but funny enough were all pardoned, all of them, by a man who was a vice president at the time and most likely the orchestrator of all of it. Funny how the shit never stuck to that Grandmaster, didn't it? Mr. George Herbert Walker Schaeff. So when we start throwing crap at Iran, we really need to look at what we've done. And sidling up to the Saudis is not my idea of making America great again. I'll have more information on that in the intel. Of course, this was President Trump's first foreign trip abroad, but it also brought a big benefit to his daughter, which some of you may not like. I know I didn't. As Trump travelled the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have pledged $100 million to a fund for alleged women entrepreneurs proposed by Ivanka Trump. The massive donations comes in spite of Trump as a presidential candidate criticising rival Hillary Clinton for letting her charity take funds from the Saudis. So what has transpired is that Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates would donate to the Women's Entrepreneurs Fund, a programme that Ivanka Trump pitched to the World Bank Group. President Jim Yong Kim, and has discussed it with none other than Angela Merkel and several other world leaders. The fund's money will be controlled solely by the World Bank, not Ivanka Trump. But she continues fundraising for it even while serving as an advisor to her father and travelling with him to meet foreign diplomats. Now, this has got to come under ethics concerns. You know, we all applauded Trump when he outed Clinton and her foundation and what they were doing and the links to Russia and others. But here we are, pretty much the first day of his first foreign trip, and his daughter is getting 100 million donations from what is really a rogue country as far as America is concerned. Back in June last year, Trump said Saudi Arabia and many of the countries that gave vast amounts of money to the Clinton Foundation want women as slaves and also want to kill gays. Hillary must return all money from such countries. Even during an October debate, Trump told Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, Saudi Arabia giving 25 million. Of all these countries, you talk about women and women's rights. So these are people that push gays off business and off buildings, and these are people that kill women and treat women horribly, and yet you take the money, he said to Hillary. And now we have a situation where his daughter is taking money off the same people. It doesn't look good. Whichever way you look at it, it just doesn't look good. We might as well continue with the Trump theme. There is other news in other countries, but it's been kind of dominated by Trump this week. What largely went unnoticed is in April last month, Mr. Trump signed House Joint Resolution 69, HJR 69, into law. And this particular legislation rescinds the US Fish and Wildlife Service and the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge Rule. The Refuge Rule was enacted to protect native carnivores on Alaska's refuges from the State Board of Game. Predator management program, basically what it is, which allows practices such as the killing of bears with cubs and wolves with pups, as well as the hunting of animals from aircraft, among other things. And Mr. Wayne Purcell, president of the Humane Society, said what the Senate did today should outrage the conscience of every animal lover in America. When the bill passed the Senate in March, the passage of this bill means that we will see wolf families killed at their dens, bears chased down by planes, or suffering for hours in barbaric steel-jawed traps or snares. He also mentioned the bill postures that it is okay in luring grizzly bears with food to get a point-blank kill, as another technique that will return in the absence of the rule. So HJR 69 is a Congressional Review Act resolution which allows Congress to invalidate a federal regulation like the refuge rule within 60 legislative days of its taking effect. The issuing agency of the rejected rule, in this case USFWS, cannot later issue a substantially similar rule, so it can't be overruled. It's not the only thing that's where the wildlife has suffered, because Mr. Trump's budget proposals today calls for savings of $10 million next year by selling wild horses captured throughout the West, mainly in Colorado, without the current requirement that buyers guarantee the animals won't be resold for slaughter. So in other words, they can do what they like now. Wild horses advocates say the change would gut nearly half a century of protection for the wild horses, which is an icon of the American West, and could send thousands of free-roaming Mustangs to foreign slaughterhouses for processing as food. Is that making America great? Your choice, not mine. Where are we next? UK. Now, of course, everyone remembers the Brexit vote in, I think it was May last year, or April last year, and Britain's still in the EU, and they've had all kinds of fun and games to pull out of it and sidestep it. Well, here's the latest. As it looks like Britain is going to quit talks on leaving the European Union unless the EU bloc drops its demands for what is basically a divorce payment as high as €100 billion, which is around $112 billion. Brexit Secretary David Davis said Britain's negotiations would otherwise be plunged into chaos, and even a £1 billion settlement would be a loss of money. The size of Britain's exit bill and which types of negotiations can begin before it has been agreed has been a source of debate for weeks. The European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said that the UK will have to pay about £50 billion, which is roughly $60 billion, while Luxembourg Prime Minister Mr. Bettel has signalled a figure between 40 and 60 billion euros, which is around about the same in dollars. What you'll find, people in Britain, is all this is stage managed. They know Britain can't afford to pay $112 billion, £90 billion roughly, and so it's a convenient cop-out to not leave the EU. And what they'll tell you next is, well, we can't afford it, so we'll have to stay in it until further notice. You watch. Basically, they're setting it up, and they're all in on it. Nearly half of all retail workers are currently at risk of losing their jobs to robots. We've covered this a number of times recently. Well, this is a new report that's come out. The 56-page report states that roughly 6 to 7.5 million retail jobs will likely be automated out of existence in the near future. I'm talking about within 5 years. And this will leave a large portion of the retail workforce at risk of becoming stranded workers. Now, 73% of the workers are women, who will suffer the most job losses, and the losses will also be disproportionately affect the working poor, since most hourly retail workers live below the poverty line. About 16 million people, or 1 in 10 American workers, are employed currently in the retail industry. Yes, they're going to wheel out the robots. I can see in this country a scenario where some of our more hot-headed people are going to start shooting the robots. You took my job. Bang, it is we have a laugh about it, but it's something people really need to start looking at, because basically what they're telling us, they're going to replace us humans. Because if everything changes, suddenly half the jobs that is kind of been drastically reduced over the last 10 years. Imagine losing another half, or even 3/4, to robots. What are the people going to live on? I know there's living wage coming up, but what will the conditions be to join that or accept it? That's going to be the key. Most people at that point, if they've got no job and they've lost their home and etc., will sign up for anything just to keep existing. That's not a criticism, that's just a case of getting by. But how long do we carry on just getting by? Just existing? And what will the conditions be for the living wage? Will it be the chip? I'm not putting fear, but these are some of the things they'll come up with. You can only collect your funds if you get a chip. This is the way these people think. Or you'll have to have this vaccine, or you'll have to have this, or you'll have to do this or this. And most people go, no, they can't do that. Well, they've done everything else. So it's just a heads up that these are some of the things that we could be facing over the next few years unless drastic changes are made. Where are we going next? Pentagon. This is the type of thing that really galls me. Not only does the Pentagon get a fund that's way beyond all reason, particularly the military fund, compared to the funds for the programs to look after the people. Bear in mind, all of it is the people's money, not theirs. A lot of people seem to have forgotten that. Governments and banks have no money, they have your money. So the Pentagon has generated almost $6 billion over the last 7 years by charging the armed forces excessive prices for fuel, and spent the money themselves. That in anyone else's book is theft. But that profit should have gone back into the government and to the people. $6 billion just lost like that. Not quite as much as $9 trillion that they've lost over the last 15 years, but it's bad enough. And this is called the Bishop's Fund. Indeed. To bolster mismanaged or underfunded military programs, the documents show since 2015 the Defence Department has tapped surpluses from its fuel accounts for $80 million to train, here we go, Syrian rebels, $450 million to shore up a prescription drug program riddled with fraud, and $1.4 billion to cover unanticipated expenses from the war in Afghanistan. 450 million to shore up a prescription drug program. Interesting wording, is it not? So the Pentagon has amassed the extra cash by billing the armed forces for fuel at rates often much higher, sometimes $1 per gallon extra or more than what commercial airlines paid for jet fuel on the open market. Under a bureaucracy that dates to World War II, the Defense Department purchases all of its fuel centrally and then resells it at a fixed price to the Air Force, Navy, Army, Marine and other customers. You can't make this shit up. How are they allowed to be an enterprise? I thought they were there to provide safety for the people. I was being sarcastic. And so the Pentagon makes money and then sells the fuel to the other departments who pay for it out of their own budgets, which means we're paying for it. The system is intended to reduce duplication and promote efficiency. For whom? The Defense Department is the largest single consumer of fuel in the world. Each year it buys about 100 million barrels or 4.2 billion gallons of refined petroleum for its aircraft, warship, tanks and other machines. 4.2 billion gallons, and we're paying for it. Now, some people will think I'm kind of being a bit critical of the military here, but understand it's not the average soldier I'm critical of. Although I do feel by now those soldiers must realise they're not fighting for freedom, and perhaps by now should have stepped down. I know it's called subordination and all that, but you can't carry on living a lie. You know, the military and the Pentagon are becoming a blight on American people. I know there's good people in those, a lot of good people in those organisations, but as usual, it's the few idiots, the psychopaths and the greedy bastards who are ruining it for everybody else. And we really have to start seeing in this country for what it is. It's a giant elephant in the room in this country, and whilst we continue to look outside of the room for the latest boogeyman like Russians and Muslims and Mexicans, Taliban and ISIS, etc., we will always struggle in this country. Always. Vast quantities of our money is being used and abused against us and the rest of the world, and we really have to look at it and address it and stop facilitating it. Enough's enough, as they say. Because we were talking about the basic income program, or the living wage, a couple of minutes ago. What many was a surprise to me, because I didn't hear about it, probably a surprise to most other people, is that it's already been operating in some certain countries. And one of the biggest criticisms of it is it's a system of giving people modest salaries for just being alive, and that it would encourage people not to work. Except a new report on an ongoing cash transfer program launched back in 2011 in, wait for it, Iran. Ooh, those nasty people. Iran, people in Iran would cast some doubt on that particular claim, that it discourages people from working. And there was 2 economists who looked into it, and the paper found no evidence to support the idea that people receiving cash transfers take themselves out of the labour force. In fact, some workers even expanded their hours, the report found. And Iran's nationwide cash transfer policy emerged out of heavy cuts to gas and bread subsidies made by the then President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in late 2010. The monthly transfer amounted to about 29% of median household income, or about $1.50 per extra head of a household per day. The equivalent in the US would mean an extra $16,389.64 per year, which is well above the standard scheme that has been bandied about of $1,000 a month proposed by many. So the Iranians have been getting roughly $16,400 a year, and no evidence of people quitting a job. Where are we next? Time. Right, okay. I'm going to go into a couple of this is what I wanted to mention as well. Ambulance services in the US. For those in Europe, this will kind of horrify you. Well, I had personal experience of this, so I can bear out the costs. But a guy this week, Rick Santoro, learned the hard way about the cost of ambulance services after receiving a 2-mile trip in February. He then received a bill for $2,691. Expensive taxi there. $13.50 per mile. That has to stop. That really has to stop. Where are we next? Right, we're going to leave the intel till the second hour. So, the carnage continues apace at home here. The American hokey cokey dance, one politician in and one politician out, and you just shake it all about like the song says. You do the hokey cokey and you spin around, and that's what it's all about. Well, that's what's going on at the moment. Politicians are being put in, politicians are being taken out, moving people out of one department, put them in another, and it's all getting rather confusion of who's who, who's bad, who's doing the good things and who's not. And this is all planned by them. It's getting you to spin around. It's exactly what they want at this time. So you don't know whether you're coming, going, or left. I mentioned last night about being immersed in the noise and all the confusion, where they pull you one way, then the other, and then back again. I think most people are now starting to see this is what's going on this year, with the volume of information designed to overload you. Of course, this show did warn of it, and we did prepare, but I still don't think people expected this level of basically chaos. and it's a war for the mind. Now, one thing I mentioned last night is if you get immersed in the noise and the confusion, you can't see anything. You're in the crowd. It becomes confrontational. You become disoriented. And the key to wisdom and understanding is stepping outside of the matrix and getting the overview. Don't immerse yourself in the confrontation. That's the last thing they want any of us to do, is to step back. Because when you step back and out of the mass, you see, you really see. You don't just look, you see. You don't just listen, you hear. And then get a better view of what's really taking place. And they're trying to spin you out of control, or into depression, or into alcohol, or into drugs, or pharmaceuticals. Anything to throw you off track. In America, UK, France, Canada, Holland, have all had recent elections, and all of it mired in noise and confusion, lies and deceit. All of them are done in a background of complete deceit and total bullshittery. Now, Mr. Trump, as mentioned earlier, is off abroad. He's actually broken protocol of previous presidents, which may be a good thing, may not be. Whereas normal protocol was to visit Mexico or Canada first. Except Mr. Trump's first trip was to Saudi Arabia and to do an arms deal, which hasn't gone down with this particular show host too well. So, is that let's make America great again by selling things that kill people? Is that what he means by we're going to create jobs? Well, I think people are tired of having jobs that kill other people. They're tired of making weaponry that not only kill people, it destroys the towns and cities and villages of people and the planet. There's far better places to create money and jobs than war. So is this really what we the American people desire? Just give me a job and money. Doesn't matter who it affects or kills. We need jobs, 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 said Mr. Trump. Not at all costs, we don't. It's not arms, weapons or security systems that the people want or need. Arms deals with known funders of the real terrorists. Oil rich, check. Gold and assets, check. Allied with Israel, check. Is that not indicative to many? Not so surprised to this person, as you will all know by now. But it's there right in your face. His next stop is Israel, who, let us not forget, are funded by the US and Saudi Arabia. Now, for those who still believe in Trump, and that's fine, you know, We're all entitled to our own opinion. But those two have never done anything beneficial for America or its people. I noticed the media didn't cover that Mr. Trump was supposed to go and visit the Palestine people. Be interesting to hear what took place in those talks. Then of course he went to the Vatican. Again, it could be indicative, it may not be, as time will tell. And that the talks that came out of there are fairly interesting. We'll have more on that in the second hour. When I wrote this, Mr. Trump hadn't been to certain places, and I've been given certain knowledge of what took place in certain ones, but it didn't look good, and to a degree it has lessened, but not too much. And then Trump goes on to Brussels, a bastion of corruption, fraud and pedophilia, one giant centre for it, with added bonus of those in it having apparent diplomatic immunity. Once again, it's rules for them and rules for the rest of us. And if the above lot doesn't raise your eyebrows, Mr. Trump was then off to Italy for NATO meetings and the G7, neither of which this country should be a part of, in my opinion. Right, the next piece is a bit longer. It's going to go into a bit more, so I think it's time for a music break. Yeah, and then we're going to carry on with another op-ed piece, so I can tell you what's really going on and some things, and give you some hope in the intel, some interesting bits in the intel. Right, let's have this one. Hi all, and welcome to the second hour this evening. We're not going to sit in silence, and we're not going to sit in fear, and that is correct. We are the voice. We always have been, we've just forgotten. So I'm going to continue with a piece that I prepared last Saturday of what I see is going on, and the sleight of hand games that maybe some of you will be aware of, so some of you might see it for what it is, but those that don't, this is how things play out. And then after that I'm going to get into the intel. So the Russian, let me just check that. Yep, just checking the sound is okay. The Russians did it, reaches fever pitch now. The Russians getting blamed for everything, and again it's all designed to throw you off path whilst they continue with their sleight of hand projects. To me at least, it's proven to be correct that the Russians did interfere with the US election. It would create a massive irony, and dare I say it, a massive karma. Although most will react with anger and outrage, which is what they want, the irony is we the people have given our paid representatives free license to invade 81 countries, none of which has attacked us, and interfere with 61 countries' elections without recourse. Now the key is, where was our anger and outrage at that? Now remember, I've said this a number of times about how they always tell you this is the programming, and it's done decades in advance. You know, people who remember the factions, so Albert Pike, he told you what the Third World War was about in 1888. Basically 102 years before they were going to start it. 1990 they were going to roll out World War III. They've had attempts since, and they've all failed and will continue to fail. But the boogeyman is always 6,000 to 8,000 miles away, and we should all fear them, as they are really bad, these people. These Russians and these Muslims and the Chinese and the North Koreans, etc. But it's kindergarten style chatter, and far too many lap it up, and far too many times for this person's particular liking. So this is how they operate, and this is what they're planning to do currently at the moment. Now, the first stage is create confusion where there is none. Get masses into a rage and confusion to create disturbances in their thinking patterns. This is more common than you realise. Stage 2. Bring out the old fear programming, laced into the populace from childhood age, that something or someone is coming to get them and take their freedoms away and corrupt your brain. Stage 3. The boogeyman of choice, which is now Russia. As it appears now, the Muslim narrative, although it's running rather hot in the EU, the Muslim narrative is not working anymore due to each and every one of you listening to the likes of this show and many others. We, the government, told you in the 50s onwards those communists were a threat to American freedoms. Again, this is how they do things, way in advance. They seed the mind. And this has two sides to it. It creates an us and them, and reinforces the patriot American, where you must do everything for your country at all times. Subservience to the country is not patriotism, but actually fascism. Then they use a situation to set the stage, in this case the presidency. Install all the actors, be it Comey, Flynn, McMaster, Mattis, McCain, Pence, Ryan, all who have got dodgy pasts, dodgy presents also, I might add. And of course the great invisible man known as General Dunford. And maybe some people will have noticed how, since we exposed Mr. Dunford on this particular show for what he is, an illusion, how his name's just faded into the background now. Why hasn't Mr. Dunford been put in the team if he was that important to do the RVs and all the other bullshittery that they were alleged to have done, republics, etc.? And so these stage actors then throw brickbats at each other and create the illusion of people fighting for justice, but merely are just creating the stage for the final act. It's the sleight of hand, problem, reaction, solution. Now, the elites, by whatever method, did not get the result they wanted in November, and have since created the mass confusion state we now face. And make no bones about it, they're in trouble financially. Big, big trouble. Otherwise, all the programs that they had for us would have been rolled out by now, and none of them have. And I have the belief none of them will either. So they can't get the programs off the ground as they wanted. The 1 million man army to smash right through the Middle East. All of it. It's the Rothschilds again. NATO can't get off the ground for its war with Russia. The RV and the theft from the public hasn't gone anywhere and won't either. The Agenda 21 was put back to 2030. It'll go out of existence. And so now more and more people are seeing them for what they are. And the next step now for them is a radical one, whichever way it goes. So now all the stage is set. The elites want Hillary in as El Presidente, so she can declare war on whoever the choice of the day is, which currently is Russia. And of course, what does war create? Money. Guess who's the most beneficiaries of all-out war? The same people who are pushing it. They own the munitions, the armories, the weaponry, and missile factories. So what they do is they then fire off a few, so they make money selling loads of weaponry to frighten nations. Oh, America's going to bomb North Korea. We better get some missiles of our own in case North Korea fires at us. And the merry-go-round continues. And as if they haven't made enough money from selling arms to known terrorists, after they've bombed the said country of choice pretty much into oblivion, we the people have to spend more money, or it's created and or stolen, under the guise of rebuilding the country. Why are we rebuilding Iraq? Don't get me wrong, we have an obligation. We shouldn't have bombed it into oblivion to begin with. But it doesn't make sense of why we would rebuild Iraq when this country's going to hell in a handbasket. So the same company or companies who sold the equipment to carry out that act now get more money to rebuild the damage that they did. See how it works? All in-house. An aggressor destroying something else and then rebuilding it. Why haven't people questioned that logic? You know, it's like two kids in a playground fighting, and one kid rips the other one's shirt off his back. Does he think, oh, I'll go out and buy that kid a new shirt? It's the same thing. There's no sense or logic to it. The other non-logical is, why are terrorists so honest? A bomb goes off and there's all kinds of terrorist groups holding their hands up. We did it, we did it. Imagine the same kid I just mentioned going in and stealing something from a shop and getting outside and says, I did it, I did it. Or the IRS putting a notification out, who hasn't paid the taxes, and everyone going, puts their hand up and goes, it was me, it was me. Again, there's no logic to it. Because it wasn't them that did it. It's the same people that create the confusion, that make the money, and then make more money rebuilding what they destroyed. So on to the next stage. Now they create a situation all designed to provide the solution they have been waiting for the gullible public to ask them for. This is how they play it all out. They wait for our consent, and far too many times we've just given it them. So Mr. Trump colluded with Russia. Did he or didn't he? But let's ignore the fact that it appears so did every other politician in recent times. So why single out Trump? Let us also not forget that Hillary and their foundation and the uranium deals with those awful Russian people and their communistic ways sold America's in-ground resources to the alleged country she wants to bomb because they're all bad over there. It's all right to not like them, but we'll take the money off them. It's hypocrisy at its worst. So let's forget all that and concentrate on Trump colluding with Russia, and he fixed the election, as they say. Ignore what Hillary did, and then actors will come forward and support and provide said evidence of collusion, whether it's true or not. Mainstream media tells it it's true, so everyone believes it. Well, most of our listeners don't. But this is how it plays out to the masses. As far as the mainstream media goes, this is America, and we tell you what to believe. So now we have the problem. Next stage is the reaction, the public reaction. So, Mr. Trump's a commie. He's speaking with Russia, colluding with Russia, they say. He's sleeping with a KGB agent. It's actually true. And Trump is ruining our country and is a double Russian agent, read the headlines. Public then react with rage, shouting impeach him, jail him, exile him, anything but get him out of our White House. See how it all plays out? And now you can see why there's already a swelling of anti-Trump. It's all about creating a reaction. Now, Mr. Trump is just one of those guys, people either love him or they hate him. There's no grey areas with him. And it's perfect for the cabal. Whether he wants to be part of the cabal or not. He has no choice. You see, it's the grey ones, the ones in balance, that they have the greatest difficulty with. They like the polar opposite people. And all it needs now is to confuse the Trumpites to change opinions. And the stage is really set. Now some will, and have already. The tide's turning against Mr. Trump. So we go on to the next stage, where they pull the solution out of their pockets they had all along from day one. As the last election was unfair on poor Hillary because those nasty Russians cheated on it. I know, let's have a new election where we make it all fair. Then they reinstall the machines that only votes Hillary wins and declares we have had a totally fair election now, with reinforcing of how America is so great, how good people saved the day, and how we protected our great constitution and values. The founding fathers will be so proud of us. Today is a victory for America. You can hear it all on the news. So if Hillary does manage to achieve what that entity known as Hillary is setting out to do. Of course, Trump's already mentioned in the past week, he's already complained about being the president, and how he wants his life back. Is that another pointer? Time will tell. And so he will leave the stage he was never meant to be on in the first place, and enter Android and a special synthetic style of war, rape, pillage and murder. This then sets the stage for the final act, where she will declare on war with Russia, having sold all the uranium to them previously. Because Russia had the effrontery to copy what Langley have done for the last 70 years and allegedly steal an election, which is all bullshit, all of it. The public and the media, the sycophantic media, lap it all up and all happy clapper like performing seals, and off we go into Armageddon whilst they hide in bunkers. Sufficient documents will be leaked to the public and the alternative media of how a coup and how Hillary stole the stolen election. Trump reappears to rile up the public, and the stage is now complete. Rage ensues and civil war erupts. An expansion of the already played out scene of Trump and anti-Trump people dotted all around the country, only this time it would be on a much wider scale. The economy collapses, staged or otherwise, and all the solutions to their problem will go away. War on a larger scale creates money and wipes out opposition, creates looting situations of treasures and assets, as in Palmyra. Population reduction. Meanwhile, back at home the situation is now out of hand, which means we'd have to have martial law, and onto the streets come the mercenaries, robots and synthetics to apply order, and in doing so also target the individuals who don't bow to their plans. This is what they are up to at the moment. The sleight of hand. Whether they will achieve it, I have big doubts. But I wanted to make people realise and see how the game is played in all its points. Now, the first half a dozen points have already played out. I'm hoping the last 6 don't. And a lot of work is being done by a lot of people who are under massive amounts of threats at the moment. Some have been shot at, some have been taken out. You've no idea what's going on behind the scenes at the moment. People being tracked. So I hope that was beneficial to some people on how they play the game and how we can see right through it and not fall for the confusion and the sleight of hand. They personally think it's absolutely hilarious. They do the same things over and over, and we fall for it every single time. We being the total people, not we the listeners to this show and the others in the alternative media. But even some in the alternative media are anti-Muslim or anti-this or anti-that, when the real problem's closer to home. We have to deal with our issues first. Yes, there are issues in every single country, but I'm sure I speak for many that I'm tired that my money and your money is being used to police, in inverted commas, the rest of the world, when we can't even police our own people. The criminals in the White House, the criminals in the banks, the criminals in the churches. I would sooner see our military deal with those people Where are we now? Right. Some intel. Some of this will enrage you, and we're going to end on a good piece. So the Rothschilds, those not so lovable family again. There's a few bits on them, no doubt. Listen closely to this intel, please. I know some people get mixed up as they're not listening. The Rothschilds intended this week on trying to force all the Allied nations to sign a NATO agreement which, wait for it, forces them to give up 30%, 30, of their entire budgets to NATO. Not 30% of our military budget, no, 30% of our entire budget. One hopes Mr. Trump told them to go and F themselves. Now, the Saudi deal mentioned earlier was for a few reasons. The American government is broke. We told you about this last November. It's completely broke. Not surprised when the Pentagon's doing side deals and making money at our expense. And they're in desperate need of cash. And so that is why the arms deal was done with the Saudis. It's not the only reason. Because Saudi Arabia was actually, via OPEC, threatening the United States of America with price manipulation on oil in regards to dollar crashing. Oops. And here's a name from the past. You've got Mr. Rumsfeld to thank for that lot. Yes, again, him and Cheney rear their ugly heads. Now, from what the intel that I've received is that it's not expected that the arms will actually be delivered, from what I understand. So whilst the deal has been done, the money will be received, but the arms will not be going. Make of that what you will. And the Saudis have now been warned to never threaten the United States of America ever again, or actions will be taken. Now, Trump visited the Pope this week, and the reason he was going there will surprise many, but he was promised assets, and that the Pope would be giving Mr. Trump assets. Except this promise was made by the Rothschilds yet again. The Pope this week has now been notified that the Rothschilds are nobodies anymore. They have no clout, they have no sovereignty, they're not monarchs, they're not royalty, they're not anything but vampiric parasites. And the Pope pulled him into a closed door meeting and told Mr. Trump the truth. This may change the game here when he gets back. because there's some people in the military and clowns in the government who think the Rothschilds are there to be bowed down to. It will be interesting to see what plays out when Trump returns. As of yet, we don't know what Mr. Trump is going to do. But there are under no illusions anymore about who or what the Rothschilds are, or rather not. Now, the Rothschilds Elders Group last week did another dirty deed. They claimed full ownership of the Th&I Trust. Now, the legal teams, one of which is connected to this show, stepped in to block it. They are still working on it, and I don't think it will fly. And the reason being is the Rothschilds think they are monarchs, royalty. There are monarchs and there are monarchs. They're not royalty. The Th&I Trust, for those who don't know, are the birth certificates. Maybe that's why the Rothschilds told Trump he was getting assets. I'll have more about that later on. On Wednesday, following another failed attempt at an RV, they tried to crash all the new and old transfer systems, SWIFT, SIPs, the new one, in a desperate attempt to hack money out of the system again to keep themselves going. The reality is now we're in the final stretch. There's no two ways about it now. As mentioned last week about the elastic band getting tighter and tighter, and it could go either way. I can't say it's all going to be a fantastic thing, but it could get real ugly as well. I always said I will say it as it is. I think long term it's going to be better, but you can never underestimate the depths of the psychopathic mind and what they're capable of. Now, the biggest threats to humanity as it stands now, it's not the Rothschilds, funny enough, it's the UN. Even though they are no longer sovereign and have no authority over any nation anymore. Oops. And the biggest threat is NATO. They are really pushing for an all-out war with the Nazis from the American faction, and have a large presence of not only, from what I gather, $30 trillion of stolen funds, but a whole heap of troops in Norway currently. Beware the people who report from Norway. Make of that what you will. All the top brass, the clowns, appear to be pulling strings over there and getting supported by other Scandinavian countries, plus Holland. It has to be watched, and it is. It's being monitored. Oh, we've the time. Right, this is the final piece of the intel, and then we're going to go into some music again, because the music really fits in with this. And there's been a lot of deep research over the last 12 months, the last 2 years, into all the old agreements. Who owns what, when, where and why? Does X, Y or Z exist? Or is it a shell company or a shell organisation? Does X, Y or Z have any clout, any sovereignty, any pull? And access has been gained to some of the really ancient documents. Of course, we mentioned earlier about the treaty, the loophole in the treaty with the Draco, which is 16,500 years old. That ended the Draco control here. But there's other documents that people have been going through, spending a great deal of time, I might add, seeing where they created the sideway path, which is what they're very fond of doing. You go that way and we'll sidle off, sleight of hand while you're not looking, and create this royal bloodline or that royal bloodline, or we install this one and remove that one, etc, etc, etc. We'll make this agreement, we'll call it the Paris Treaty, but really we're just going to steal everyone's in-ground resources. So all those documents and treaties and agreements have been diligently gone through. And something's come up in this past week, and it's to do with the restoration of the Sangreal and the superseding of all agreements signed thereafter. Now, the message in the documents was there will be no more false monarchs, Mr. Rothschild. So that means the Seswi KV trust, etc., that they tried to claim is now all null and void, and back into the main trust. And apparently this week notifications were sent out to all the churches, as in the Vatican, the Orthodox churches and some holy temple in Jerusalem, and the document references something to do with the Treaty of Alexandria. Now, this is not the one from the 1800s, but it's something from the early 300 AD. And the document deals with the resurrection of man. Now, for people who don't understand that terminology, is since then all men are declared dead at age 7 under the current agreements. It plays into the maritime law. If you don't claim who you are and your trust, they class you as lost at sea at age 7, and so subsequently dead. Dead people can't own anything. That's why it tells you on the mortgage title, even though you've paid cash for that home, you are the tenant, not the owner. Same as your car. You register it with the Department of Transport. You're handing over the ownership of your car. Same with your child. You are recording it, two separate words, to the state. Now, some good people in the Rosicrucian group, yes, there are some, good and bad and all, have found the particular loophole, and Basically now, that document overrides anything agreed wrongly after 300 AD. So all bogus documents where we got roped into handing our sovereignty over and all kinds of everything else will be declared null and void with this document, including the Magna Carta. Some people think that's a good document. Some parts of it might be. What people don't realise is King John basically sold every square inch of Britain and its people to the Vatican. What for? Money for war. $12.15, I think it was. So agreements like that will now be declared null and void. This is why the documents were sent to the churches. They held everything. Now apparently it's all been a loophole, and the documents have been validated and apparently sealed by some type of ceremony in the past week. The Sangreal, restoration of the Sangreal. And what it establishes is there will be leaders, in inverted commas, which are not kings. Think of that. The only real king is Source. These leaders are going to be the guiders of the monarchs, which is basically everyone. It is said that all humans are monarchs in essence. So each person is not ruled but guided by the voice of Source under this revived situation. So the parties that relay the information are a case of being more informing and teaching. I hope you understand that intention and meaning behind that. So this loophole could well facilitate the move to eventually take all of the people out of slavery and servitude. No more kings, or queens for that matter. And we will no longer be classed as a dead person. No more capital letters in our name. And an end to the theft of the people's trust by all becoming sovereign entities. That is the intel for this week. The restoration of the Sangreal. Hi all, and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show, the usual Q&A, except I missed off one of the intel bits, and I'm going to mention that now. Now, some people may have experienced in the last few weeks rather strange energies, feel of distance, surreal. I mentioned it last night. And what took place a week last Tuesday, a week last Tuesday, was the clowns have been playing games again. Not only here, but outside clowns as well. And On the Tuesday morning, they opened the portal and tried to force this planet into it. Now, the planet, as being viewed, was hurtling down a tube on an angle the same as the elliptical plane. And the planet was stopped just before the opening, going through the portal, and was held in stasis until this week, until it was ascertained what was actually taking place. And I've now received 2 other corroborating statements that this event took place. And so this is probably why the energies of the past week or 2 have felt different for some. Now, there's been 2 attempts to open portals in the last month, in this month. There is a 3rd attempt which will fail, and after that there's no more exit strategies. It's still being worked out how they will manage to open up another portal. Maybe there's more than we realise, but either way it was stopped. Let me see if I can find some questions. With all that news and intel, it's way down the page. Where are we? In your opinion, could it be possible for a pet to be part of our personal soul family? Yes. It's not just this planet that has pets, although some of the pets on the other planets are a bit more exotic than cats and dogs. Maybe on some other planets the humans are the pets. You never know. Considering the theory that we could travel from life to life in a group of 12, not too sure that that's the case. I think there's larger groups in that in certain situations, but that may be the more popular one. Why do the US presidents bow to the Saudi king? Good question. I have no idea why. You know, maybe the last, the intel before the last music break, where old habits die hard. In the future there'll be nobody bound to anybody. When we find out for real who and what we are, the idea of bound to somebody else is preposterous. The idea that because you're born into a certain family that's got money, whether acquired by good means or foul, that makes you more important than anybody else, is again absurd to me. I've had people say, oh, it's an honour to speak to me. Why? I'm no different to you. Just because I speak on the radio show doesn't make me more important than any of the listeners. In fact, the listeners are more important than me. Because if there's no one listening, I'm just a talking head into empty space. So the idea of what, you know, it just flies in the face of everything that we're taught, particularly in this country. The leader of the free world, the most important president in the world, and yet goes to another country and bows down. Something's amiss, isn't it? So, whether it's to do with an ancient ritual, certain bloodlines remains to be seen. But in the future, when all the filings and all the documents and all the agreements are rewritten, and the people have as much right as everybody else, and that ridiculous practice of bowing down to anybody will end. You should never bow down to anyone. And that includes Source. He doesn't, or it doesn't think it's more important than you. You are part of it. So why should you bow down? Ridiculous to me. Could you please expand on the domesticated spy topic in reference to cats? How can a person tell if their cat is a spy? How did the technology enter into them? Is it all of the cats on the planet now, and are people's dogs being used as domesticated spies also? Well, this was part tongue-in-cheek, but partly it's not. I think it's something to do with our past, that cats, for whatever reason, are being used as a program currently on the people. There's lots of cuddly little animals all around the world. Pandas, tigers, white tigers, and favourites of mine, funny enough. People who like birds and people who like bears. And so why is everyone posting cat pictures? And it's not just people having a bit of a laugh with me. This goes way beyond it. It's a program. So why do the cabal like the cats so much? Why do they use them as egregores? Where Chloe used them last night's show and explained what that means. Why are black cats stationed at certain gold bunkers? Why are black cats being positioned in the square mile in London, the entrance to the financial capital of the world? Why is the Sphinx in front of the pyramids? Why is there cat people, known as felinoids, on the hieroglyphs? Go look for yourself. Now those egregores, as Chloe mentioned, have a black magic resonance. So why is it they always use cats? Unless there's an agenda behind it. Now the CIA have been using domesticated cats as spies. That's not a joke. That is actually in the records released under the Freedom of Information Act. Cats have been, and not just cats, dogs, but they appear to want to use cats rather than dogs. Wonder why they call it a dog man's best friend. Maybe because the cats aren't. Now, I've never really been able to get to the bottom of why I've never liked domesticated cats. I just don't. Maybe it's that attitude. I don't know. Maybe it's something in my past life. I tend to think that that's the reason. But there's sufficient evidence around the world where cats are not good. And they're being used in, for a purpose to engineer dark magic. So I hope that explained it. Is it a case that all cats are being used as spies? No. No. When you have time, would you please give us more info on Radomir? I know people keep getting that mixed up. It's actually Radomir and Mary Magdalene, their children, and any more you may be able to reveal about them to us. The facts about them will be very helpful to me, as there are so many different stories about these fascinating people leading to all kinds of misdirection. I'm hoping, when time allows, to do another show on that. There's a lot of... It will take a fair amount of time, and I haven't even started this, so don't expect it in the next month. But maybe if I get time in a month or two, I might be able to prepare something for that type of show. It's very detailed, gives you a lot of history about how the Catholic Church has attempted to destroy the Sangreal, the bloodline, the real bloodline, to insert their own entity into the role. Yeshua, Joshua, Yahweh. That's not the real one. That's the reptilian one. For those who don't believe it, go and see the altar, the throne altar inside the Vatican. That's where you'll see a reptilian right underneath where the Pope does his speeches. After Lucifer was released, where did he go? Can't say. What is his status? Okay. Is he working for good, bad, or resting? As Chloe mentioned last night, this is something we actually know a lot more on, but have chosen not to release because it is dangerous. And of course you get people accusing you of looking at the information in a wrong way and suddenly declaring they're Luciferians and whatnot. But throughout history, whether the Lucifer story is correct or it isn't, the way I would get people to listen to information is, how many times have they lied about certain people, and then you find out at a later date suddenly they weren't the bad guys. That's how they work things. So whether Lucifer was good, bad, or indifferent, you have to look at it in the same light as all the rest of the information, where if you reverse it, it then not only makes sense, but the picture becomes an awful lot clearer. Now, Lucifer was the guardian of children originally. So what if they used that energy against the children? Inverted it. Are the Catholic Church nice to children? It's not for me to answer. You all know the answer. Have they been nice to children throughout history? Hunting down Mary Magdalene and Jesus, the real Jesus, Radomir's children. Is that looking after children? Is interfering with all the altar boys? Is the nuns interfering in the homes? Torturing, abusing, sexually abusing, violence, rituals. You heard Kevin Annett last night. This has taken place in many, many of the churches. It's not an odd one here and there. This is a total program. Well, they have the ability to invert energy. Or entities do. And capture a person of light. You remember Lucifer was called the bringer of light. Again, that can be inverted. It could be bringer of dark. I'll leave it to the listener to make their own choice. I'm just throwing out devil's advocate. Because it's a sensitive subject that it's best if the people make their own choice rather than me deciding it for you. But the key is, have the Roman Catholic Church looked after the children. Maybe then you'll find out things are a lot different than you've been told. Here's someone who thinks I'm the Oracle. Can you give us a status report on the new currency introduction? Nope. Republic, currently not happening. Maybe later. Arrest totals. I mean, come on. I'm supposed to know all that. And benefits increased for seniors. I'm not the Oracle. On last week's show you said Paul McCartney died in the year you were born. No, Paul McCartney died 5 years after I was born. But this particular person saw the Beatles in 1964, and that was the original Paul McCartney. If the current Paul McCartney is a replacement, isn't he and what he's done better than the original? It depends on perspective. Are the Beatles better than the Rolling Stones? Are the Beatles better than the Hollies? There was a load of bands at that time that were just as good. Maybe some people will think were better than the Beatles. So why all the mania? Same reason I mentioned earlier. It's a program. You know, people were screaming everywhere they went. Why? You know, the music was not that special. The four lads were not, I wouldn't say, were model material. So why did they attract all that attention? Because it's programming. And that tells you how far back that programming has been induced onto the public. The Beatles was the first supergroup born out of the Tavistock Institute. A bit like MK Ultra for musicians, where it's all engineered. And if you think that this current version is better than the original, again, like I say, it's your perspective. But if people around the world find out he's a fraud, I don't think many people will have that same opinion. My endearing memory of Paul McCartney, or the person known as Paul McCartney, was the Frog song on that awful Mullet Kintyre that they used to play every Christmas in Britain. Oh boy. Vomit inducing. I digress. The Runer on his blog mentions the UPU with apparent disdain and doubt. Have they been outed as illegitimate? Not to my knowledge. Yes, Shane is doubtful of the UPU and its implications, or what it promises to deliver. Time will tell. My own personal opinion is I'm kind of disappointed with the UPU that more progress hasn't been made. I'm kind of disappointed that they haven't protected certain individuals that have come under fire. But it is said that they're supposed to be protecting the all rather than individuals. I still think they can support the ones that are known to them better than they have. So no, Shane doesn't think the UPU is valid. Where are we next? Are all living beings in a universe from one creator? In this one, yes. And do they all have a soul like humans? No. According to Nikolai Levashov, there were a large number of PSI generators placed in other dimensions by the dark forces that were mentally controlling the humans on this planet. How can the Council then justify that we were complicit? Good question. And yes, he is right. There were plasma tech and all kinds of other advanced tech that we were unaware of. And a lot of them have been removed by certain people on this planet with abilities, Mr. Levashov being one of them. Further items were found and removed. So there was elements, it's chicken and the egg, there was elements of control. But it goes back to the beginning. If you were telepathic, had all kinds of magic abilities, magic in inverted commas, and not with a K, a C, how can you ever be tricked? You can't. And so we give some of our power away. And we gave so much of it away, we then became under their control. And yes, there's been fun and games here that should never have taken place. And doesn't matter which council is involved, it should have been stopped a long time ago. So technically, from the off, we were complicit. Like the 100 series, I keep telling people to watch that. It basically shows us where we came from, what we did, and an overview of humanity and how they act when they are in control of themselves. And people would argue, well, we wouldn't be like that. But if you were looking down on this planet with a clear conscience, you would say, yes, we are acting like that. Divide and conquer, haves and have-nots. People think it's okay to race one another to become the first billionaire, whilst there's people on the streets. Now in the series, the 100, the humans, or a number of humans, decided to take the pill. This is what took place in the past. All your pain will go away. There was a lot of trauma on this planet after the Atlantis debacle. Messing around with genetics, creating chimeras, destabilising the planet and its ecosystem. Never mind the war. And humans took the pill to forget the pain and the trauma, and basically became mind-controlled zombies. In the 100 series, it's called the City of Light. Everyone just walks around like a zombie. Look familiar? Go into your town centre, you'll see the City of Light everywhere. Mind-controlled people who took the pill to forget the pain and trauma. So to them, nothing's happening. There's no kids being sexually abused or organs harvested. So they don't absorb any pain or trauma. None. That's why I call us the sin eaters, because we absorb it. Because we have empathy. We're living souls, not synthetic bio-robots. So yes, we are complicit. We were complicit. And we've never been more complicit than at this time now. We're ignoring the warnings, the transhumanism, the replacing us with robots. It's all in your face. Do we sit back and allow them to do it, or do we fight back? Do we allow them to continually invade our privacy, destroy our lifestyle, destroy our health, destroy our way of living, destroy our relationships? Or do you fight back? Hope that answers your question. It's a bit longer than I thought. Any ideas how to handle prepper fatigue? Yeah, just stop doing it. If you've got 1 or 2 months or even 2 weeks of supplies, you've got more than enough. Anything more, I know there's some people who have gone really far, and I've got a year's worth or 2 years worth of food, and we see the adverts on some of the alternative media. God's going to strike us down because America needs karma. Come and buy food supply off our website. It's one thing laughing at the other. We're all going to die, but come and buy our food stock. If you are stacked floor to ceiling like some people I've heard, and the shit hits the fan, and you've got friends and family who know you're stacked to the ceiling in food and they don't have any, you know what comes next. So if you're going to prep, a couple of weeks is fine, and whatever you do, keep quiet. Can you place in chronicle audio different humanoid races? No. The Lemuria and Atlantis went on for too long a time. time period, 125,000 years down to 13. Agartha is debatable whether that's the real name. There is people underneath our feet, whether that's the real name. I have a feeling it may not be correct. That term, I'm not saying it's not correct in essence, but that terminology is a lot of words to do with the ET narrative that don't fit. Parents, if memory serves me correctly, go back to 150,000 years. I could be wrong on that. I've got it somewhere in the files. Maldek was one of the family, and also a planet. Anunnaki and the planet. Maldek was the one that was destroyed and causing a lot of fun and games. Adam and Eve, that's Algory. There's been a number of Adam and Eves. The 100, well, people should watch it. You know, it tells you about the nuclear wars, which there has been in the past, that destroyed most of this planet. From tens of thousands of years ago, the fallouts all across the Middle East, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, all across there. So that's where the spaceport was. And Mr. Marduk was left behind. And so the Ark was a craft, not a boat on the ocean. It was a craft in the sky. So the 100 series is telling you that. And then certain amounts landed to start a new life after the nuclear fallout ended. Except there was a number of humans still there. Did they all look after each other and live in harmony? No. They started fighting each other and wiping each other out. We're the king, no, we're the leaders, we're Sky Crew, we're more important than you. Well, no, we're the grounders, we were here before you, etc, etc, etc. And this is what's playing out in reality across Earth. Americans think they're better than Canadians, and Britain thinks they're better than everybody. Germans think they're better than everybody. And we don't like this group, and we don't like that group. Same thing. It's all in the 100. City of Light, where the humans took the pill to forget everything, the pain and the trauma. Walked around like zombies. And the most significant line in that series was when Clark, I think it was in the 3rd series, Clark turned around to Bellamy and Rowan, who was the leader of the Grounders, if I'm not mistaken, and says, "Where's all the good guys?" And the reply was, "There is none." And again, that applies to here now. Now, don't get me wrong, what I'm saying, that there is absolutely no good guys, because there is. But the reason, the way that was said, is they hadn't created the good guys. They were too busy arguing amongst each other and fighting for who's the leader. And this region, we want, this is our region and that's your region. That they forgot to create good guys to apply for all. Sound familiar? Because it is. Neanderthals were wiped out 40,000 years ago with the experiment with the white, yellow and black. That shouldn't have mixed, because of, not because of race, before people start calling me Nazi again, because of genetics, cultural genetics. In fact, we shouldn't have been here. The reality is we were all refugees and should have only been here for a short time, and then the three races returned to where they came from. Except some groups decided to take advantage, and that's what happened. What will the final triggers be to break the system? Any ideas? It could be any number. It could be a simple case of documentation, proving that people have the rights the same as everybody else, as mentioned earlier. It could be some of the stuff that the Kingdom of Humanity have filed. A better way of living, better banking, better everything. People living in harmony with each other and with nature. You know, it's not rocket science, is it? But what will it take to break the back of the cabal? People probably won't like the answer. The answer is us. Just saying. We don't want it anymore. And people will go, it can't be that simple. It is. When the people finally decide we don't want this controlling system anymore, we don't want war, and we want fair and the basics in life and freedom, and prepared to put up a system based by the people, for the people, where we look after ourselves, then the cabal falls away. It really is that simple. How can the cabal, I've said this before, the cabal step down at midnight tonight. What happens tomorrow? Chaos. You have one person say, well, here's all my manifesto, and my ideas are better than you, and we're going to argue and fight over who's got the best legal team and who's got the best this and best that. Because that's what we do. That's what we have done. Not, let's ignore minor differences and move forward. We have to fill the void in. And the only way we do that is by stepping up with personal responsibility and filling in the void of the cabal. Because once we become personally responsible and can look after ourselves, the cabal no longer exists. It can't. So that's the final trigger. Us. In recent ransomware attacks, what computer security software would you recommend? I would ask, if you're on the Facebook page, ask James Godbeer. He's more in tune with computer security than I. I'm not too sure there's much these days. Everything appears to be hacked, apart from the new financial system. I wonder where that came from. Is the movie Avatar a glimpse of what Earth used to be? At a certain time, yes, but it also might have also resembled another planet within our solar system that is no longer here now. Can we arrange a poll regarding leaving Facebook for good and making the most of MeWe? We can do. It's people's choice. That's all we've basically done, is give people a choice. They stay with Facebook and complain about the data breaches and the privacy and the ads and all the other stuff and the mind control that they're implementing, AI mind control into Facebook, or you take the leap and join MeWe. Personal choice. I'm not forcing anyone to move. It's their own choice. Now we are learning our slavery goes even further up to the Dracos and maybe beyond. How do you think the council will deal with explaining all the negative ETs and their abhorrent actions when the time comes? I have wondered, however good their intentions may be towards us, disclosing information of that nature might result in a public backlash against them. People could very well blame them for allowing it to occur. And that's the common thought. But I hope you listen to what I've just mentioned earlier, to the question before. Were we complicit for the control? Because even to this day, with the vast volume of ET disclosure, and yes, admittedly a lot of it has been total bullshittery. I think you all know the names by now. But 32 countries have released all their ET files. Is that not disclosure? Now, some of the more awful practices which has been going on here, and I have to say, with the support of most, if not all, the councils, because it went right to the edge of what's acceptable and what's not. But even now, you know, it's what, 40 years 40 years since Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which gave people an idea of ET disclosure. Of course, that movie was based on a 1964 incident, and an incident in Wisconsin and also in Utah, where all the sheep died. That was around what is now called Area 52, Dugway. I've been warning people about Dugway for the last 5 years and no one's been listening. And lo and behold, that's the stronghold now from Area 51. And funny enough, that's where your DNA goes. All those ones have been on Ancestry.com and all the other. That's where they send it. It's the only place in the whole of the USA, Salt Lake, where they do it. Coincidence? Don't think so. And that applies to people in Canada also, I might add, as far as I know, unless that's changed. So, with regards to the negative ETs, it's the humanoid ones. In fact, some of the humanoid ones are far worse than the bloody Draco. That has to be said, because it's true. We've let ourselves go so far down that we've ended up being controlled by everyone and his neighbour. We should never have done that to ourselves. Yes, what followed is bad. It's heinous, and I'll never make small of that. But it comes down to us giving away too much of our power. The idea that a fairly unintelligent race whose sole purpose is seek and destroy, like the Draco, can get one over on humanity when you find out who and what you are. It's just not funny. It defies all belief. And this is why people think we're backward. Because we've given so much of our power away that technically lesser races are domineering over us. But going back to the question, yes, there will be a public backlash. Work is ongoing with the Draco that I know of, where in a future time they apologise for their actions here, and hopefully we can work together as equals, which is a big climb down for them. But they also realise that they should never have in a million years ruled over us. But we gave it away. We signed the treaty with them. People may well blame the councils, but then if the councils then tells you some of the stuff I've mentioned tonight, and also the disclosure in the 100 series, the question would then be asked, who allowed it to occur really? Was it us or was it them? Some of the older questions. Compartmentalization of the brain, i.e. create alters as a tool to divide, hide and program. Could this also be used elsewhere in the universe to divide, hide and program other species? And is this a common practice? I'm not too sure whether I would imagine it does, because some of the ones that introduced that program were not from here. Some of the more heinous aspects of it. Did the knowledge of mind compartmentalization exist before humans were created or modified? I imagine some of the older races were aware of that ability. The real world is the world of sound, according to the 5th interview. Wingmakers, do they mean the mental plane? No. The mental plane is it's made up of there's 4 mental planes, which is above the astral, which is also higher and lower. And then you get down to the physical plane. I'm trying to remember the one, the etheric. You've got the physical, the etheric, the lower astral, which is actually hell, where the vampiric entities who loosh off us via attachments. You have people who get bad injuries or have connections to entities or egregores that open up the PSI field of a human and attach themselves. So that's the lower astral, and then the higher astrals where you don't interact with those type of entities. And then you get into the mental planes. That's when people start gaining extra wisdom, foresight, intellect, which is higher than intelligence, healing abilities, remote viewing, bilocation, telekinesis. They all take place on the mental planes as the individual human develops. So that as you progress through those stages, and suddenly you see the change in yourself, it means you've jumped one of the earth planes. You're still here and now, but where your thinking process comes from the higher plane, the higher self. This is a good question, and I don't know the answer, but I imagine it is. And it's part of the fun and games that the clowns have been playing with us. Does karmic law come into place when an alter is killing whilst the original knows nothing about this behaviour? Is there some aspect of compassion or wisdom in it? No, there's no get out of jail free cards from what I understand. It is it's fairly cruel, I have to say that. The internet monopolies are using various means to extinguish, severely censor, demonetize media. What is being done about this so free speech won't continue to be eroded? There's not a lot until certain situations are improved, certain groups, entities, individuals, departments are removed that are doing this fun and games. One of the things that we don't do is back down. I've had threats, death threats. It's not pleasant, but you won't get me to keep quiet. I'm not the only one on the internet who will turn around and say that. We can't keep quiet. We've been threatened for too long. So it creates the cycle. They issue a threat, you go into fear, you clam up, you go quiet. You're out of the game. You're not a threat. If everyone steps out of the fear and faces up to them, they have no power. Power that they think they have is an illusion that we provide the platform for. This is an older question, and apologies because certain things got pushed further down week after week with some of the extra shows and the guests we've had on. My family and I have been experiencing routine sickness for the last calendar year. The sickness developed in my wife and our 3 children. Our immune system defeated. Within 1 or 2 weeks, another ailment afflicts someone in the family. We pass it on to one another, month to month. On it goes. I know a person thinks it's related to what they're spraying. Is this true? It can be a number of cases. It could be part of the chemtrails. It could be psychic attacks. Yes, they can induce sickness. It could be part of the meds. Maybe some of you are taking. You may not be taking meds. I'm just throwing out examples where the meds erode the immune system. This was explained in the Humanity Unplugged 2, I think. So the very thing that's supposed to be fixing, it's weakening. And your immune system itself takes 3 to 6 months to fully charge up its battery to fight the next. So if you're getting it month on month, you've got no juice. Now, the other thing that you may have to consider is it may be something in the home. Some homes have dark attached to it. Some homes are unlucky. Some homes have a lot of death, a lot of sickness, divorce. The last home I was in, it's 30 roughly 30 years old. It's had 2 deaths and 2 divorces in 30 years. I would say that home is unlucky. Maybe it's somewhere it was something it was built on. Shouldn't have been built there. This all plays into it. Well, you'll find it's, or you may have, I know there was one particular member, or a particularly unpleasant member, I might add, in Cosmic Voice, who had all kinds of stones from all around the world, and thought that they would protect her, that particular person, except he didn't program in the way that particular person wanted. So all the people that touched that stone have put energy into it. If 1 or 2 of them are not good or dark, all it takes is, say for argument's sake, someone goes to Tibet and they think, I'm going to buy a trinket from Tibet. Well, what if there's a dark priest there who's basically wafted his hand and passed dark energy over everything, and you think, I'm going to be blessed, I've come back with this from Tibet, and then suddenly you get sick. Now, a lot of people think this is all pseudoscience until it happens to you. Just be aware. So look at, for that person, maybe sage the house. Maybe there's entities or dark energy there that's making you all sick. Where are we? When they say history repeats itself, are they talking about the time loop? Yeah, pretty much. They just repeated it over and over again because we haven't been clever enough or strong enough to work out there is a loop and to step out of it. Except this time will be different. And yes, many will be returning home. Is it possible to simulate gravity as depicted in certain sci-fi movies by rotating a structure in space? Yes. Anti-gravitic. These craft, again, is described in the Humanity Unplugged 1 about how they do that. It's also, for those who want more details, read The Final Appeal to Mankind 1 and 2. It tells you how they do, how you're able to do that. Science on this planet has no idea. They don't operate in truth. They operate with narrow thinking and are incapable or unwilling to expand the mindset, which is why they still can't work out a whole heap of things. And the answer's fairly simple. They think everything's complex. It's not. Nature's not complex, it's simple. So why, according to science, is everything complex? Because then it creates the idea in the general public that you're not clever enough. It's very, very complex, so you can't understand it. So don't get involved in it and just accept what we're telling you, which is all scripted by the Roman Catholic Church again. Remember, they used to set fire to all the scientists and the free thinkers until they took over the science movement in the 1600s and then controlled the narrative. And that's how it works. I think I answered your question. Yes, I did. I'm doing a Drake tonight and I'm rambling away. Thomas, do you know of Robert Stanley? Yes, he claims to have met in Malibu, California, Enki, aka Lucifer. Enki is not Lucifer. In which Marduk is his son. Good luck with that. Stanley claims Elkie feels he's our creator father and won't give us up, hence the fighting. Enki was not the good one. Oops. Remember I said earlier about inverting things, and then you have a truer picture. There's another example. Rumour is the Vatican has an entity captive protected which is causing this dark war to continue. Has is not the case. Was is the answer. That rescue mission took place in September of 2015, and they can no longer use that particular entity for fun and games anymore. And I think I've gone through enough. Pretty much done with the questions. There's one or two. It's too late now. Show last night, show tonight. I think we'll wrap it up. Now, there's plenty for everyone there to ponder on tonight, as per these shows. It's to get you thinking. You know, as Kevin said last night, it's not an entertainment. You know, the heinous stuff that's going on around the world should not be taken as an entertainment. It's there to inspire you to say enough's enough and do whatever you can based on your abilities to make the changes. There's thousands of ways that you can hamper their efforts on a personal level. Just do it. Don't be stuck in old habits. We're all just as guilty as that, myself included. Stuck in old habits. That's how it continues. Don't. You be the change. Right, where are we? Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you enjoyed the show last night with Kevin Annett. He has a lot of interesting things to say. You spoke to Kevin earlier. He's willing to come on another show in the future. Maybe give us some updates, maybe like John Darash does with the National Liberty Alliance. So the person who asked, will Shane be coming on? I'll leave that up to Shane. It's a possibility that Shane may come back and do a few radio shows. I'm not pushing him. He has enough on his plate, and if he wants to do a show, he knows, like Th&I, that this show is always open when they want to come on. So we'll see. I'm gonna, as I did that last night, I'm gonna end with something different, and the music will support it. The music is called Dreamwalker. A dreamwalker is not just a daydreamer, but someone who dreams in reality and walks among their dreams in both wake and slumber. Those who walk in two worlds now are experiencing the heaviest burdens. Support them and make